Gentlemen, the conversation about athleticism begins a new series. We're going to do it live and we're going to also record it into the camera. It's a little bit like the Future Expander series. If you haven't checked it out, that could be a good one to look at as well. That one is about success in life, business, lots of different aspects. Now we're going to do a series that's purely based on the athletic thing, the thing that I'm actually qualified to talk about, where I have coached world champions and done stuff that a lot of people haven't been able to experience. It's a little bit of that in business, but there's more of it in the athletic thing. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, this opportunity to ask questions, share thoughts, see where it goes. But I'll start with the big idea and then see where we get to with conversation after that. So the first big idea is that you have to choose to be an excellent athlete to become an excellent athlete, which is not necessarily, doesn't sound like a wild idea, but very few people give themselves permission to really explore what they're capable of. Those athletes whose names you know, who you can say, who jump to your mind when you think of who's an excellent athlete, whether it's a guy in a certain team sport or individual sport athlete, at some point they've decided that they're an excellent athlete. Now maybe it's because someone else planted the seed and said, oh, you're extremely talented, like you're going to do it. Maybe it's because someone said you're not going to do it. And hey, Usain Bolt, you're too tall to run 100 meters. Maybe you should focus on the 400, which is what he was told. And hey, Stefan Holm, you're too short to be a high jumper. Maybe you should go and do ballroom dancing instead. But no, they go and compete at the Olympics and set new standards for mankind. Sometimes it's because you're told, nah, you're not going to. Sometimes it's because you're told, oh, you're the talented one and you need to pursue this. But for whatever reason, there has to be a thing inside that says, I'm going to do this. And no one can fully give you that. You have to choose that, take that for yourself, to value your own journey. And you can value it through the lens of, okay, I want to play a professional sport and get recognized and get a contract and all this external validation and recognition, and that's cool, that's fine. But there's also the decision of, I'm just going to do this for myself. I'm going to do this for my children. This matters to me, regardless of whether it ever makes me some money. Now, there's always going to be opportunity to monetize extreme athletic ability because it's innate within us. When you see someone doing something very athletic, you're like, respect. There's curiosity. There's a question, could I do that? When Eden's watching me, he starts just twitching in the way that he's watching me do something, and it's like his body's already doing it. The mirror neurons are working. And we all have that. We have that into adulthood as well. Where you see someone doing, like, oh, I wonder. Someone goes across a slack line, oh, I wonder. So this first piece is choosing exceptional athletic ability. And there's three things that go within that. One is consistency. Regardless of your current ability, if you show up and you can be consistent, regardless of the method, regardless of anything else, if you're consistent, you give yourself an opportunity. It doesn't mean you're going to be the best, but you give yourself an opportunity. If you can't be consistent, there's no chance. It's not going to happen. So this is challenging because we're living in a time of distraction. There's a lot of things to look at. There's a lot of things to do. You're planning on having your hour set aside, but then there's this pull of like, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that and get back to this message, and attention is getting pulled in all different directions. So you got to find a way to be consistent. If you can consistently do more volume than others, you can probably get to a very high level. Even if your method is kind of shitty, you're probably not going to be that bad in the way that you're training. If you can do more work than what others are doing, chances are you'll get to a reasonable level. That's enough to be professional, to be within the top 1% within a realm if you're doing more than others. But then we want to also go for excellence. So how do we crank up the quality of the thing? How do we make the training more dense? How do we create stronger feedback loops within it? How can we mimic and replicate the best of what's been done before? I'm a big fan of looking for the best of what's been done before in similar realms, in other abilities that are not directly the one that you think you're chasing. So we've been talking about it with soccer. You're thinking, okay, like football, we need to be on the ball, we need to be doing this and that. It's all a proven path. Yeah, but Zlatan talks about Taekwondo being part of the reason why he's catching the ball, he's trapping balls up higher than other players, or he's happier receiving balls into different positions. And so who's got the best footwork? Who's got the fastest feet? Who's got the most agile legs? Who's got the best spatial awareness? And if you can get to a poor or average level in tap dancing and tricking and trampoline, then you're going to be excellent compared to other football players in that ability of foot speed or spatial awareness. So you have to then look for these windows or gaps into excellence. One of the simplest ones with football was we had Scott Ferries here, who trialled with Liverpool and Manchester United. He was in the Scottish under-15s, so he was on the path. The reason he didn't play a lot of professional football was social stuff. It wasn't because he wasn't good enough. But he was speaking about your ability to kick the ball from there to there and he'd come back to you, and how many times you could do that in a minute. And he was saying that he had a coach who told him what the Brazilian under-10 standard was, and all the Scottish international players weren't up to Brazilian 10-year-old level at the academy in Brazil. So this was a simple, very small little task of like, just kick the ball, show that you can kick the ball straight. It's completely under their control. Something that anyone can get a lot better at as well. You think of Brazilians with all the flair and stuff, but there was this element. And Scott really took that on. When Scott came to Vanuatu, he's like, yeah, they need to work on this stuff as well. So this is the opposite of what I'm saying of the taekwondo and the trampoline and the tricking, is like, okay, kick the ball 1 meter lots of times and be the best at that. Be better than other players at that. And the third thing is the inspiration, the joy, the divine component of it. Because you're probably not going to stick at the consistency and that search for excellence if you can't find something else that brings more meaning to it. So there was a triple jumper, Jonathan Edwards, I think his name was, and he was told, nah, wrong tibia length, wrong femurs, your nose is pointing to the left a little bit, you can't do it. Kind of ugly, whatever it was. But he went to the Institute of Sport, and the people, you know, the powers that be, the scientists said, no, not you. He broke the world record, not his first Olympics, not his second Olympics, but his third Olympics was the one where he actually won, and he set a world record that, I don't know if it still stands, but it stood for decades after. When Ben was talking about it with the Nordics, the record still stood. So he's told he couldn't. What did he have? What does it relate to what we just talked about? He was very religious. At that time, he was very religious, and he believed that that was his thing that he needed to do. After he stopped competing, he stopped being religious, he stopped believing, and had a different experience. But oftentimes, there's something else that drives, whether it's with the family, the children, whether it's with the divine, with God. But at some point, finding joy and deeper inspiration for what you do is probably necessary. Often it's, with professional athletes in my experience, it's just like childlike joy, and you can see they still are able to find like that playful element, and they get to go play every day, and it's almost like what they do between the drills and between the training session, like before the training session, after the training session, even to some extent like in the showers and in the like all the just goofing around that they get to do by being with other guys, like just I don't know where your mind's going with that, but yeah, you know what I mean, like it's the camaraderie and the fun of like living that style of life is something that you can fall in love with as well, where you're pursuing, like where you're consistent, where you're pursuing the excellence. And if you look at babies, and you know we're going to go more into this as we dive in, but babies have that joy for what they're doing. They have that deep engagement with the task at hand, and you can see when they achieve something that they've been wanting to achieve, or they surprise themselves in a good way, you see it light up. You see a laugh, you see a smile when Eden catches the ball, or sometimes when he just balances on a thing, or whatever it is, like a spontaneous joy comes out in him. And I think being able to maintain or find some of that, you see it with Steph Curry, the way he's got so many highlights of like making trick shots. He's still having fun. He's still got that joyful element to what he's doing. We had a little bit maybe yesterday with the coconuts. It's like you kind of train in power. Like in some level, you're like, yeah, this is a workout. But there's another level of it that like, how good is this? Like we get to throw coconuts at the tree for an hour, rest for a bit, then throw them again. And this is part one. Before we go into the science, the details, and the big ideas of physicality, like there's a psychological level to this that no one else can give you. It's an invitation of like, make it a life philosophy, or it's an invitation into having athleticism be at the core of your experience, and yeah, giving permission, giving an invitation to take it to an extreme level and see how it feels. I don't know what comes up for you with thinking about this, hearing this. To what extent are you experiencing at the moment?
I mean, for me, it's the thing I've been thinking about, especially the first thing when you mentioned the consistency or like the passion you need to have. I think so many out there have this, but they're not able to put in the consistency for a specific reason, which in my case was, for example, struggling with injuries.
Yeah.
Right, and then it's, if the athleticism is such a big part of your life, or like even your identity,
yeah,
having that being taken away from you is a really big thing. But on the other hand, it can give you a purpose, a direction, and that's what's coming up for me.
Yeah. It's funny, I recorded a video earlier on like what makes a bulletproof baller, and it's kind of along the same elements, a bit of inspiration from geeks in around them, but it's like you choose to be that, and like the end destination is like, okay, all this other stuff, all these frameworks are bits to get you closer or growing in that, but as soon as you choose to be a bulletproof baller, cool, that's it. And then all of everything else just comes with it and experiences it. So you've chosen to be athletic excellently, and then it's like, okay, well, now I've got to see what to do, and it'll just come if you know where the vision is.
Yeah, absolutely. At some point you realize like you can try and like, you're choosing to be a bulletproof baller, then you need to maybe humble yourself and say, okay, right now I'm at this point, that's what I need to do first in order to take those next steps. And
you need to know where you are, where you're going, and the map will...
Absolutely. That's it. Any thoughts, Kev?
Yeah, I suppose it's like stories are demonstrations of life that can be lived, and they're demonstrations of lessons and errors that people have gone through. And it's like you're always gonna have that hero's journey kind of circle go around in someone's life, and then it's like at the end of the day, the choice comes down to you of like, right now, there's a story of chronically injured, tore muscles, did something to my knee, did something to my ankle, whatever it might be. Same for maybe Keegan, and then you go, this is where I was at a young age, I'm going to be the best, and you look up and I'm going to be the Olympian, I'm going to do this thing, and you have that joy and it absolutely bursts out of you. That's the energy that's there, and it's like, as you just said, it's like they had it in the pitch still. It's still there. It wasn't like enculturated out of them because they had a fallback. It's like actually probably got more value to it. So that's why even if you see it in the service and people get back to the game, they're like, oh my god, it's unbelievable. I felt like this is all I worked my whole life to be, and then now I don't get to do it anymore, and then now I get to do it. Jeez, I thought I wasn't going to get to do it. So it's ain't like you're robbed of like all the years that you just built up. And I think that sense of definitive purpose comes sometimes with sport. It gives a sense of direction for your life. And there were just some things that came up.
Yeah, there's an element that you can't necessarily determine the outcome. So you can determine the path that you're going on, but someone could, you could get hit by a bus, and something deviates you from the path that you want to take, and you're talking about with injury and such. But there'll always be an athletic journey. While you're alive, there's always an athletic journey that you can take. And so it's somewhat independent of that one specific goal that you have. And younger men will have potentially these specific goals towards a certain outcome in a certain sport, which is cool. And there's that goal-driven aspect. But there's a bigger picture to this of life philosophy that can't be taken away from you. That's not dependent on that one specific outcome that you can keep for the rest of your life. And it was something that I aspired to with the professional athletes, the rugby players, when I was working with them, is that I would give them things and create a joyful environment that they would want to actually continue to do stuff after they finish their professional careers. Because a lot of them would kind of get fat and get arthritis, and you'd see the old players and just be like, oh, it's such a shame. Like, you worked so hard on your athleticism, but it wasn't even it was all externally driven. You never actually fell in love with it, or it wasn't you, or you could only do it if someone's going to pay you to do it. and you know that's a shame, I think, and probably for most people watching this, it's gonna be like, yeah, maybe you want to break a world record, maybe there's a specific feat there. I think what I'm more excited about with New Athlete is to push the boundaries of what's possible and what you're capable of, regardless of the external validation. Like, it may be there, it may not be there, but I think the best, if you look at Maradona, if you look at the best in whatever field, there's clearly an element of who gives a fuck about anyone else, about the game, about anything. Like, this is me and the ball, this is me and my expression, and it's not just to go and potentially you win the trophy or you don't win the trophy. You win the World Cup final or you don't win the World Cup final. Like, you can't determine that external thing, but you can determine if you're in love with your process of life every day. That's what can't be taken away from you, because there's always going to be something that you can do. And yeah, we're going to dive into details, and you guys are dedicating your lives as well to helping people to overcome limitations in why it's not working as well as it could. But the key idea of this first piece is like the mental thing that you can't be taken away from you. You can't be like, oh no, I was gonna, but then had this thing, and now I get to be a lazy piece of shit. I watch a lot of porn and eat a lot of junk food, but it's not my fault. I broke my leg playing soccer, and that was the end of it. So, no. Use what you can. You can always have this athletic outlook on life, and doesn't have a requirement of being a certain profession or having a certain amount of time a day. Or it's a mind. It's a decision of the mind.
Always starts in the mind.
100%.
And what filters do you think what filters of, if you're picking through it, we got a play filter that, someone might get annoyed, I got this injury, but it's the reframing of the new pain frame that they're going through, and they can't seem to go back to where they were. They're living in this victimhood of, oh, I'm here, but I can't get out there, or I'll go to this hedonistic behaviour because it's easier than, oh, yeah, actually, this is what I've done my whole life.
Yeah. Most athletes need a serious injury to really fall in love with what they're doing and realize, like, yeah, I actually do want to do this thing and take it to another level. I rolled my ankle and damaged the tib-fib ligament, ATFL, when I was 19 or 20. I'd just been picked in the state team, was going to miss the state championships, pushing for Australian under-21s selection in indoor hockey. And when I thought about it, it happened in a game. I kind of stood on the ball and rolled over it. And when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, but I've been drinking quite a lot. I've been partying. I've been, this and that. Like, do I really want this? And so I decided, okay, I'm not going to drink until I'm back playing again. And that spell of training, even when I was in the boot and like I had an operation on it and then had a long time of recovery, that was probably the most important spell that then pushed me ahead to be able to make senior men's teams and push, I made the Australian Australian Open squad for playing in the World Cup in indoor hockey, and I played in the senior team at the national championships, and I felt like I was on the path to playing in the Olympics, but it was because that catalyst of like the disappointment of I can't play in this tournament. I actually went to the tournament, the national championships, on my crutches because I'd already paid for the ticket and it was like pretty close to when it was on. They asked me still to go. But it's a blessing. It can be a real blessing to have this, rather than, you can look at it as an excuse or you can look at it as an opportunity. And with a lot of the players that in rugby, there's always someone who's had a serious injury, like pretty much always. Very few times you don't have someone in the rehab group. And so there was always opportunity with them to take them to another level. And it was often made their careers because they got the opportunity for the first time to really focus on their physical ability. And often it did make a big difference for them. There was a kid in France who the coach said like he's too small, he's not going to play. He was like 81, 82 kilos and he was a winger. He's just like, yeah, he's not going to play. And he got injured. And I had him for about 8 weeks, and after 8 weeks he was 89 kilos, and we got another injury in his position, and he played. And so he went from injured to making his debut. He scored 5 tries on debut. He's lightning, but he was heavier than he'd ever been, because he had that little opportunity to do a pre-season where he wasn't out on the field running all the time, and he was focused, and we did like a cluster style training. He trained with a player who was a fair bit heavier than him, so he's trying to keep up with the weights and everything. He's just eating a lot, training super hard, putting on a ton of mass, and it gave him that boost. And then he got to play, and then he played for a number of years after that. And sometimes that's all you need. So there's always opportunity with it, and whatever it is that you can't do, like there's a million other things that you can do. So yeah, it's often an important opportunity. Players who haven't had a serious injury, like it's harder for them to really recognize the blessing that they have to be able to play and to kind of get that extra bit out of them.
Yeah. I mean, even like if you think about someone like Ronaldo, like he grew up in some bad places in Portugal, so everyone has that kind of drive of, okay, I remember the downs, so I'm going up.
Yeah, and even viewing what you're saying is like there is an opportunity there, and it's not like it's all over. And like maybe it's the first time like saying came to someone's head because it's like, I've never dealt with this chronic injury, or it doesn't seem to be a way because they're going to a physio and they go to a physio and it doesn't work, or then they're in this loop of like, oh, injury cycle, go to pitch, oh, come back and play, or you have a fine injury, just walk it off. Like the countless times I've been told that, and then you just mess your leg up. Okay, next day, grab your leg, try and take it out the bed, whatever it might be, cycle to school with one leg, you know, whatever scenario you go through.
Yeah, we got to dive into the specifics of how to rebuild stuff and what to do when something's in play, and the chronic stuff, the short-term stuff. But yeah, if you have the outlook of always looking for the opportunity, then there will always be a big opportunity there. The chance that you have when you can't use your legs to push ahead, you're juggling or something, and then you have that then for the rest of your life, that you've pushed that ability along when you couldn't do the other thing, where you might never have focused on it. So there'll always be these new pieces, and I think within this model, that's what excites me about it as well, is there's always going to be big improvement to make week on week, year on year. There's going to be someone who's specialized in that thing who can always show you that next step, which makes it exciting and also keeps you humble. I love being with you guys, pushing the football side of things ahead, and someone else I'll be spending time with who's doing, I'm with Nico in France, and it's all about muscle ups and pistols, and then I'm with someone else who's really good with the ropes. I was with Tim Sheaf, and Tim's gym is great with the ropes and parkour type stuff. And for me, that means it's always going to be exciting. There's always going to be something I can do, even if I'm always behind the leader. It's okay. What are you saying?
So what Paul talks about with mind flexibility, but athletic flexibility.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, not everyone's going to necessarily want to go as broad, but there's going to be things related to what you do where it's like, well, yeah, let's test that. You can just, you can treat it as, we're going to dive further into it, but if you can put more consistency in, if you can be on that journey to excellence, and if you can have the joy of it. Dogs are a great example as well, like babies, but dogs know how to love the journey. If they're getting fed, if they're getting a little bit of attention, they're happy. They're living.
Athletic things every day.
Yeah.
He's sprinting.
Yeah, exactly. They get on the ground. They do their odd little stretch, that they maintain their ancestral postures and abilities. All right, part 1. Thank you.